case you're wondering, my crotch is not on fire.
We were worried about that.
I saw some smoke rising, but I realized it was incense or something.
So, you know, I'm just seeing it sitting here, and it's kind of like rising from here. So just...
Oh, it's beautiful, brother. If you're on fire, you're on fire. It's all good.
Oh, there's a
cleansing smoke. It's very beautiful.
Got another person.
Richard, this is one that I got from... This is one that I got from Stewie. Hematite and quartz.
Wow, it's beautiful.
So I like to hold it in my hand to ground me and also to balance my blood pressure, high blood pressure, low blood pressure.
Is that like a cluster?
This one I got from Stewie as well. This is agerine and feldspar.
Beautiful.
How beautiful is that?
Yeah.
So this one gets rid of entities and things that are like connected to your spinal cord, but Stewie knows more than I do. I don't know.
Awesome.
I know nothing. I'm just sitting here and gonna waffle with you guys and see how that goes. So
I love waffling.
Yeah. Anyway, hello Jenna. Nice to see you, or not to see a Red Jay. Welcome to the workshop. You just got moved.
Hi Jenna.
So I just wanted to check if everybody. So normally when there's another person.
Oh.
So if everybody that's in the room at the moment already, if you don't have a crystal on hand or something like that, I don't know what is like a crystal, but does everybody have some kind of a crystal? It doesn't matter what. You have yourself as well, so if you're willing to use yourself as that's cool as well.
Got a beautiful ammonite. Whoa.
Hi Leanne.
Hi.
So, like, as I was saying, if you don't have some kind of a crystal with you, please get some kind of a crystal. We're going to be doing a little bit of practical. There's going to be a lot of theory, that type of stuff. We're going to have a few conversations. With this workshop tonight, it's not necessarily an entry-level workshop. I would probably say this is intermediate to advanced workshop. If there's things or concepts that you don't understand, please, really, like I say, I prefer to hold a casual space, an informal space of learning. So if there's something that you would like to ask or say, you know, just unmute yourself and ask. I really don't mind being interrupted as long as it's not a million times. But yeah, so we will be exploring some concepts that are not kind of walking straight into crystal healing. Tomorrow's workshop at 3:30 is more about you know, using crystals to improve your own practice and to use it for your own personal growth. Tonight we're going to be doing a workshop focused on working with the planet, working with the planetary healing energies and so on. And so if I use, obviously there's a lot of terminologies that are used in this field. So if there's something that I say that you don't understand, please do not be afraid to ask. You're most welcome to send me a message afterwards. I believe we will have a little bit of a section at the end for questions and answers. So if there's something that you're wanting to understand that you didn't really understand in the time, I'll gladly explore that afterwards or at another time in further depth. So yes, welcome everybody to this wonderful One Spirit retreat. It's been a really, I wouldn't say a tough day for me, but a very insightful, beautiful, expansive, learning, growing type of day for me. A lot of beautiful synchronicities and happenings in the cycles of my life. So I hope that everybody else is having similar types of experiences, similar types of things manifesting in their realities, because it's a very important time for us to grow. It's a very important time for us to become more of who we are. And so everything that is happening to us and globally, socially, economically, and so forth is all kind of conspiring towards culminating as this beautiful thing that we're heading towards. But obviously there's a lot of things that need to be released, a lot of things that need to find their place in us or find a place somewhere else, so that we can come into this new co-creative reality that we're busy trying to collectively manifest. So I asked if everybody can get a crystal. If you're holding your crystal, please will you put it down for a bit, just kind of disconnect from it, separate it. I like to have a little bit of a moment to come into ourselves, into the space. I know everybody's been very, very busy doing all sorts of exciting meditations and movement flows and all of that type of stuff today, so we're not going to go into too much depth. But if you can all just close your eyes and just come to presence. I like to come to presence through my breath, by deepening my breath. This is a tool that you can use to come into presence. I like to make funny sounds because it lets everything out, all of the stagnant, all of the hanging around, just let it out, just take it all out of yourself. And when you come to presence in yourself, if you can just connect to your own heartbeat. Feel your heartbeat. Listen for your heartbeat. Once you have that for a moment, if you just draw your awareness to the heartbeat of the earth, the movement of the earth, the pulsation and the vibration of our Mother Earth. Just take a moment to sync your heartbeat with the heartbeat of the earth. If it's something that doesn't naturally sync, don't try and put pressure on it. Understand that we're all vibrating at a different frequency, but it is a very powerful tool for healing to come to the vibration that is the heartbeat of the earth. It is a very powerful tool that we can use for healing. Yeah, so tonight I'm very, very blessed. I'm very grateful for this opportunity because it allows me to further pursue and express and experience my own passion, which is healing the planet and healing the landscape with crystals. Part of my dream is to create large-scale crystal grids to connect with the Earth grid and basically flood the collective with all sorts of beautiful vibrational energies from the crystals. And so for me to hold a space to communicate about what my dream is and what that work involves is a really beautiful thing. So thank you all very, very much for choosing to engage with this tonight. As I say, it's not necessarily not an entry-level crystal class. So you may not understand all of the principles, all of the technologies, but I ask that if you just share presence with us. There's a lot of teachings that come in that can be applied to various different practices. And I feel that those who have been drawn to this class or to this workshop do have some role in the workings of the planetary energy field. I don't know all of you very well. I know that each of you has a unique expression and a unique way of working with the planetary energies, and this is my way. And so if there are principles that you can take from this and apply to your own workings, then that would be really, really wonderful. And I would be honored to share those practices. So this evening, the workshop that we have has been titled Awakening Sacred Earth with the Crystals. And so it's very, very important for us to understand in our belief system what we believe planet Earth is. This isn't a workshop about discussing what we believe is, but I will tell you what I believe is. And so for me, I believe that the planet is alive. I believe that the core essence of the planet has a personality, not necessarily like the personality that we have, but a very unique expression that is itself. And I feel like the personality expresses itself through the flora, through the fauna, through the animals, and through all of the different expressions of life that exist on the planet. And although we live in this very egotistical perspective of how this is the only planet with life in our solar system, the only one way of logically looking at it is to understand that as technology advances, our ability to see further out into space advances. And 100 years ago, we thought that the bounds of space were quite limited and quite within our realm of ability to experience or to explore. And so within the last 100 years, within our advancements of telescopes and technologies and satellites and so forth, we've come to understand that the universe is expanding and the universe is growing. And as it is doing that, new worlds are being born, new realities are forming, new types of creation are coming into expression. And we actually live on a very, very old expression of this planetary consciousness. We live on the Earth, which has been around for billions of years. My belief system speaks about how this time that we're experiencing, this Christian calendar, the Gregorian calendar that we refer to, that talks about perhaps the last 10,000 to 50,000 years have been perhaps the evolution of mankind from apes to the Homo sapiens. And before that, there was an ice age that killed off what was existing on the planet. And so my belief system talks about how this is now the 5th cycle that we are experiencing on this planet, and that we have had civilization on this world several times that has gone from, we are still quite early in the evolution of things, that have gone from the single-celled organism all the way up until the, fully actualized psychic being that we will, or that we, I suppose, we tap into in certain ways. And so it's very, very exciting to be a crystal worker in this time, as we are engaging with these structures that have already been created millennia ago for us to tap into. And so what I say is, I say that Earth is alive. And in that saying, I ask that you please re-examine your belief system in terms of what you believe is alive, because a tree is alive, a tree or a plant is life. It is not merely just an organism that is functioning. It is not just dead material. It is living. It has personality. A lot of trees have humor. I've experienced humor through many, many different things. And for me, part of my definition of life is that ability to interpret meaning. And so there is so much meaning that is expressed between both plants and animals. But then obviously why we're here is the minerals and animals being us. And so as much as we look at something like this, this is a collection of silicon dioxide molecules that are compressed together to form what is known as a double terminated quartz crystal. It's called it's actually a double terminated twin crystal, because you can see that there are 2 main crystals. It's called double terminated because it has a point on either side. And so on a very 3rd dimensional level, this is a compaction, a form of compacted silicon dioxide molecules that have a hexagonal structure, which creates the hexagonal structure of the quartz crystal. And so as much as we believe on this 3rd dimensional level that this is a solid form, you'll have to excuse me, I want to put my jersey on. As much as it is a solid form, we have this perspective that what we are able to experience through our senses is what defines a thing to be what it is. And so when you see a beautiful woman, all she is a beautiful woman. But once you begin to know her personality, she might be really thick, and you choose to disengage with her, or you don't follow that pathway because what your senses fed you wasn't the true essence of what she was or what it was. And so in this moment, I challenge you to challenge your senses and understand that they are still an illusionary nature, and they do not necessarily tell you the truth of a thing, but they show you different aspects of the nature of a thing. And so you can see that in a quartz crystal, because it has a hexagonal structure, it is something that can be used to store information. And so when you go out into the world and you explore all of the sacred geometry and the expressions of the hexagonal form in things like the beehive. Beehives are used to store honey. Honey is just an extension of information. It is energy that has been stored to feed at a later point. But this isn't a class about sacred geometry. And so everything that expresses itself on Earth is an extension of the sacred nature of this being that we're experiencing. Often you'll hear me refer to the Earth plane, because I also believe that this reality that we experience as the Earth is one level of the multidimensional experience that we have of planet Earth. And so when I talk about the Earth plane, I'm talking about how this is the level of reality that we are experiencing. And many of you will have seen teachings or experienced teachings where they talk about how we are moving from the 3rd dimension to the 4th dimension. A lot of teachings now will talk about how we are moving from the 4th dimension to the 5th dimension. And essentially, the earth plane is anchored at that level where we are experiencing. And so we have the struggle to say that because this is physical matter, this is a 3rd dimensional object, but we are busy lifting ourselves up from the 3rd dimension to the 4th dimension to the 5th dimension. And what's very, very interesting is when we talk about the dimension above the dimension that we experience, we talk about things being non-physical, we talk about things being in a pranic state, in an energetic state, a non-formed, an unmanifest state. And so for me, when we work with crystals, it's very important to understand that although we tap into this physical thing, we are not working with the physical thing, we are working with the pranic state of that thing, we're working with the astral being. And so I like to engage with the astral being that is our planet. You know, you'll hear names like Pachamama, Papatuanuku, Gaia, you know, Mother. We hear all of these different terminologies and names for the spirit that occupies the pranic state of our earth plane. And she's a beautiful being. She sacrifices so much for us, and she holds such a beautiful space for us. And so part of the work of awakening the sacred earth is not necessarily doing something to earth. Something that I went through a few years ago was that I have this perspective where I will be healing the planet, and we need to save the planet, and we need to heal the planet. I need to say to you in this moment that you have no capacity to heal the planet. You have no capacity to save the planet. You are the planet saving itself. You are you are that capacity. So the belief system that says that we need to be these warriors of light that go out to right the wrongs of all that was wrong is it's a dualistic perspective, and does not work well with the teachings that we work with here. And so we have this terminology called kaitiaki, and kaitiaki is a guardian or a keeper, an earth keeper, a keeper of the land, a keeper of the landscape. And so that is essentially the teachings that we work with here when we talk about awakening to the sacred earth, because we understand that all is in harmony and all is in perfection with itself. But there is a growth in that. There is some perpetual force moving it forwards. There is some kind of a process unfolding. And so to live in that perspective of perfection, to say that everything is as it's meant to be, does not drive us forward into a growth experience. It does not create evolution, it creates stagnation, because we are all sitting in the perfection that is. And that's a beautiful place to tap into. We do this with all of these healing modalities that we seek. We tap into the divine structure that is the nature of perfection. And so when we talk about awakening the sacred earth, we are not talking about waking up the planet. We are talking about waking ourselves up to the planet. And it's very important to understand that as we slowly release all of these mental structures of how we believe things are alive, or how we believe things are or are not, these limitations and belief system structures, even though they allow us to have experience and they allow us to have this movement forward into the growth of ourselves, they also imprison us in a way. And they also hold us back from experiencing the true sacred nature of this realm that we are experiencing. And so for a moment, I bring you to presence and I ask you to look around in your room. I imagine that no one is outside right now. And if you are, I would suggest you go to see a therapist. But we are in this enclosed chamber. I'm in a pretty big room. And it's really, really interesting because my belief system talks to me about how beyond the space which I'm currently occupying, nothing exists. Beyond this room, there is no form in reality, because what happens is my consciousness creates and manifests this reality in which I experience. And it's really interesting because what happens is the moment this workshop ends and the moment that this class is finished and we disengage from this communication, we may change rooms. We may engage with somebody else that is in our home. You may be doing that now, but we have all of these concepts like memory. So I remember my mother is a certain way, and my mother is a certain way because of certain experiences I remember. And so I have this construct, this framework that is my mother, that does not exist in any moment beyond the moments that I experience with her. And so it's really interesting because with that understanding, I don't know if that's been well put across, but I imagine in time that will come to be concreted for you, because you will remember and you will experience changes in your belief system, and then the physical manifestation of that will also adjust towards that perspective. And so it's a really beautiful thing to understand that we have the infinite capacity to heal anything, to heal, to change, to travel through time, to do anything, if we let go of the limitations that says that outside of this room right now is the world that was happening before I came into this room right now. And so it's a really, really beautiful teaching to understand that as the sacred earth, we are not a place of dimension, we are not a place of space, we are a place of everything being together in one space at a time. And it's very hard to grasp that, but if you were to imagine that all that existed was this room, the space that the room exists within, and as you go out the door, you are actually coming back into the same door, but with the belief that it is the other room. And I know it sounds really confusing because we try to understand these concepts from the mind, but the one thing that I always say in my crystal teachings is to get rid of your mind, because this is not a medicine of the mind. Stop reading books about crystals because it's not a medicine of the mind. Stop trying to take perspectives from anybody else. So hello, don't listen to anything I'm saying about crystals because it is my personal experience of my truth. And so a powerful teaching that you can take with you in any practice is not to take the wisdom from somebody else, but to learn with that wisdom of somebody else and allow yourself to teach yourself your wisdom. There's so many books on crystal healing, and there's so many different practices that use crystals, but it's very, very important that we don't just copycat. The true gift of God and this God's playground that we are inhabiting is that we have the infinite capacity to create new. We have the infinite capacity to become and birth and experience brand new culminations of all the past creation. And so what happens is when we start to repeat practices that other people are putting onto us, rather than bringing in different practices and creating our own amalgamation that really resonates and works with us, is that we are just repeating the past. And as everybody knows with cycles, these cycles, the only time that the cycle will end and the evolution and the expansion to newness will happen is the moment that we have met the truth of that repetition. We've seen the true nature of that repetition and let it go. Kept the treasure of it and released that which no longer serves. And so I say that with the same with crystals, is to take what serves, what resonates with you, the practices that really speak truth to you, and release that which doesn't. So, you know, there's so many, something that I would really love to abolish, and if I had the ability to just push Control Alt Delete on something in the crystal world, it would be the properties of crystals. Because I'm Stuart, I have long hair, I have a moustache, I have a nose, and so your senses, I get it a lot. Your senses, the generic senses of an individual will say, Stuart's a hippie because he doesn't wear shoes. And Stuart is this. And what's happening is we are telling things that they need to be in a certain way because our senses feed that information to us. And because we are so heavily grounded in the mind, we don't allow a thing to be what it is. We tell ourselves what a thing is and how we should experience that thing. And so, tangent all the way in the other direction is to, in the awakening of your sacred earth and the connecting to the divine being that is your Mother Gaia, is to remember that your mind is not the place from which you engage that. I would love to say to you that the heart is that place, and I'm sure many of you were thinking that. The heart is not the place. There are so many different points to access, to engage, to experience reality through, that how dare we be so bold as to say that the mind is the best, to say that the heart is the best, to say that the hands are the best, to say that the feet are the best. For me, not even in the body is the best. For me, the oneness is the best way to actually experience all of that. And I don't know, like I say, I don't know you all very well, but if you've ever had a solid experience of this interconnected oneness that we talk about, you will know what I mean, because that is the divine bliss, that is the divine beauty, that is the divine flow. And so the sooner that we can come into these types of situations and release the expectation of receiving knowledge, receiving understanding, and receiving information, and just hold the space together here, still beating in the heartbeat of Mother Earth, that is when we are able to engage and activate and awaken the sacred earth with us as the crystals. And so now I will get to this point that speaks to the mind and speaks to the heart. And those who wish to engage with the sacred earth further, I invite you to do that as well, because this is not me holding the space, this is us holding the space. And this us is not in the form of you or me or this place, but it is the everythingness that we are co-creating and collectively experiencing together. And so I wanted to start, essentially, that was kind of like a preemptive ramble. I wanted to start with the communication about the earth grid. And so I don't know if I can, I would like to ask you guys to unmute yourselves. And I don't know if Tammy's still cooking, but Richard's back, so I'm going to ask Richard. Richard, if you don't mind unmuting yourself. And then I just want to ask if the concept of this earth grid, so I'm going to say that, but we see these images of this network that surrounds the entire planet. What does that concept mean to you?
Well, for me, coming from experience, I was also a couple of years back very interested in, I don't know when it was, I think it was in early 2000s, where some people took like small crystal grids and placed it at the pole, North Pole, and I think they went to the South Pole. I can't remember.
Yeah.
They wanted to help the grid system. I think it was early 2000s. But for me, the magnetic energy around the Earth and the Northern Lights being part of that, which is the energy from the sun.
Yeah.
I imagine that it helps the Earth balance itself.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure personally, but I imagine that's what it would do.
Okay, no, that's a nice one. Thank you. Tammy, are you still cooking or can you talk? I think Tammy might be still cooking. Tracy, do you want to have a go?
Hello.
Hello.
I really don't know much at all, but it kind of reminds me of like when you put iron filings on a magnet and it creates a pattern.
Yeah.
So maybe it would be indicative of kind of a wave pattern underlying that's a result of sort of different densities or vibration or wavelengths.
Okay, I really like your guys' answers. Juan? Yes, you, sir. Hello, Luke. Welcome. Yeah.
For me, the beautiful interconnectedness of the earth and the planet and the ley lines I can only experience it honestly and wholeheartedly when I disconnect from my senses, when I don't see a grid with my physical human eyes, when I don't smell something that reminds me of something or any of the senses.
Okay.
And it's hard to explain because it's going beyond my sense of self and then entering into a divine pool or river of light. And it's just pulsating light vibrations that keep on re-energizing, revitalizing, renewing itself. And I see the planet as always a living, conscious, breathing being, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Jenna, did you want to give it a go?
Okay, so I'm kind of new to this stuff, so I'm
Absolute nonsense.
learning.
And your mind thinks so, but it's not the case. But carry on.
But yeah, I kind of agree with Farah that the world is like a whole living being, and that it has its own emotions and feelings. Like this whole COVID thing, it's really helped it to kind of heal in a way.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that you having the courage to not know but still act and speak. That's what we need. Leanne, did you want to give it a go?
Okay, so I don't really know either.
That's okay. No one really knows anything. We're all just walking around pretending.
What I would say is it basically, so if I look at the whole body is interconnected, it's got meridians, the foot's got reflexology points, the body's got all your points. We've got the chakras.
Yes.
So I would think that the grids are basically the Earth's pressure points, chakras, points that connect and make the whole Earth whole. I don't know.
Well, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. Thank you. Luke, have you caught on what we're busy talking about? Would you like to give it a go?
So apologies, I'm at home, so I've got...
We actually just started, so I was just rambling before, so welcome.
I did not hear what you...
Okay, so what I was asking was, you know, the Earth grid?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I just was asking what your perspective of what
Yes.
the Earth grid is.
Okay, so my perspective, if we look at something like the chakra system, I believe that Earth being a sentient being, an expression of consciousness, such as ourselves, such as plants, such as gemstones, contain an energetic grid through which the life force current of source consciousness runs. And that would manifest either in a chakra system, such as ours.
Yeah.
It comes to mind that our feet is actually the chakra that connects us to the center of the Earth.
Yes.
And then when we look at perhaps something like a Merkaba grid or a tree of life grid pattern that overlays on our system as well, I definitely believe that, you know, once again, drawing back to the fact that we are merely all manifestations of source or of awareness, that it would contain that perhaps on a much bigger scale too.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So you guys have given my workshop for me. Goodbye. I'm just teasing. So it's really, really beautiful because there is no right or wrong answer. The thing that I said before is that we all really walk around confidently pretending we know what we're talking about. And I'm going to try to be confident in the way that I tell you what I believe and what I practice as. But at the end of the day, it's all about us connecting with, as I say, our sacred earth and discovering and understanding that body. Because in essence, when we are young, we are learning how to work with our own body. We fumble and we fall and we crawl and we scream so that we can figure out how to, you know, be in this body that we are. And so part of my practice and part of my teachings are for us to understand that earth is part of our body. There is no separation between this physical body that I experience. Even though I can separate my hand from the ground, there is no separation from the body that is earth. And so the whole geomantic practices, the whole healing of the landscape is all about coming to understand how the earth is not separate from us, but that it is merely an extension of our body. It is almost, we can believe that it is our habitat, but we are not separated from our habitat. There is no separatedness from our body, this physical body, the light body that, you know, surrounds us, and the physical body of the earth. That is all connectedness. There is no separation. And so I really like how you guys were talking about magnetics, because essentially the thing that creates or stimulates or runs generation, electric generation, the energy, the pulsation through the earth grid is the magnetics of the planet. And so believe it or not, the magnetics of the planet have a great deal to do with many principles, but one of those principles is crystals. And obviously varying different kinds of minerals that are existing within the earth that give off an electromagnetic frequency. And I'm really excited. We live in this really wonderful time where electromagnetic frequency is not just a metaphysical term anymore. We are getting to the point in quantum physics where we're able to quantitatively measure the auric field, the magnetics, the spiritual energies, so to speak, of a thing. And so it's really, really beautiful. I'm not going to go too much into what the earth grid is to me, but essentially it's to understand that we are magnetized as this body. There is a north and there is a south. There is a yin, there is a yang. There's a man, there's a woman. It is the polarity, the duality that we're allowed to experience reality through. And so it's a really beautiful thing to understand that even though we are male, I am a male, but I am also a female. I have many different characteristics of feminine, feminine energy within me, as well as I can stand strong and be a man. And so as much as I am in the physical body of a man, there is the energy of the female. So as much as my north is here and my south is here, there's this constant communication between those poles that creates this grid network. And the planet is not one thing or the other. We can say Mama Gaia, we can say Mother Earth, we can have all of these principles, but at the end of the day, the true sacred earth that we're trying to engage with is, there's no sex to it, because this is not a two-dimensional principle. It is not this or that. It is the everythingness. It is the all-encompassing, interconnected oneness that is expressing itself as the earth plane that allows all of these other little fragments of oneness to experience on it. And so a really, really interesting thing is that whales, I really love this thought, is that whales, I don't know if anybody knows, but animals that work with migratory patterns actually fly along the grid lines, the ley lines of the planet. They fly along the magnetics of planet Earth. And it's a really, really beautiful thing, because it's not just birds, but also whales and dolphins and so forth. They all migrate along the magnetic lines of the planet. And it's not something that's visual for them. It's something that is innately felt in their being. And so I ask you now to reconnect to that innate feeling of planetary magnetics. First, start with your own personal magnetics. Learn, that's why I like how you guys were talking about the chakras, because we have these points within us, these magnetic field nodes, these major magnetic fields within our being that we need to learn to communicate with. But we also need to engage with that communication, with the communication of the planet. So if your heart could speak, what would your heart say to the heart of the earth? And so we need to have this engagement happening. Well, not need, but it would be lovely if we could all have this engagement from all of us, not just from the mind or just from the heart or just from the voice, but from the everythingness that is I, communicating with the everythingness that is the earth plane or the earth planet, or whatever you want to refer to it. And so one of the things that I really like is, I'm not sure if any of you have gone through those teachings, but they talk about how dolphins and whales are star beings. They talk about how they come from off planet, they come from somewhere else. And the thing that's really, really amazing that whales do is, if you want to join in, make a whale sound, but whales go, and it's beautiful, because if you were to map that, if you were to take if you took a technology that was able to 3D map that, it would be a sound wave. But it also, I don't know if you could hear, but it goes small and it expands and then it comes back together. And so the whales are beautiful, because what they're doing is they're busy swimming along the magnetics of the planet, charging it. They're busy cleansing the grid work of the planet. And it's not just whales, there's a lot of different other things. Elephants do the same type of work, but whales are busy swimming along the magnetics of the planet. And so you'll find that in certain parts of the planet, so like for us with the chakras, again, I really apologize if these are things that you're not fully in the understanding of, but so for me, I hold a lot of things in my heart chakra. So I go for a cleansing to release and to cleanse the energy of my heart center. But on the planet, there are also these heart centers. There are also these places where all of the energy of what is manifesting into the earth realm are culminating. And there's a lot of different practices and teachings that talk about it being here or there, the next thing. But at the end of the day, it's really just about coming to an awareness that there are places on the earth where this information and this energy are being held. And creatures like the whales are busy moving along the magnetic lines and sending pulses. So, we hear it slowly because it's a very low vibration. If you take the same technology that could map out the sound and you mapped out you stretched out, it would go. So it's beautiful, because we believe that the whale is doing a very low vibration, but it's actually just a very, very high frequency that's been stretched out through 3D material, through the physical reality in essence. And so it's beautiful, because for me, when I hear a whale singing, I'm not hearing the sound, I'm feeling the vibration, I'm feeling the magnetics flushing through the system, flowing, moving through the whole grid network of the planet and cleansing it. And so we really, we owe a great deal of thanks to the whale's consciousness and to all of these other beings that do that. But I feel like now is the time that we, in this awareness, can come back into a place of doing that as well. Because they are doing it on the land, in the sea, there's other animals doing it on the earth, but it's very important that we as the humans who believe are in control of the planet, or at least have this egotistical mind perspective that we are the steering wheel of this planetary experience that we have, to come to a place of doing that work. And so we have been for millennia, we have been for this earth cycle, the previous earth cycle, and so on. We have sacred sites, we have temples, and it's a really beautiful thing, because what we have done is we have had people that are able to scry and feel and divine these magnetic points, these magnetic nodes, where the grid work crosses. And so where the male is reaching to the female, we have intersection points. And at these intersection points, there are these nodes, these connecting points, these, some people will say that it's a gap in the dimensional fabric, so you could go through that into this whole other world. And it's very true, because it is a very high vibrational space, because the masculine energy and the feminine energy meet at that point, and they are dense there. There is oneness in that place. And so what happened is, at that place of oneness, the divine reunification of masculine and feminine that plays itself out on the surface of the planet, we've created grand temples, we've created stone circles, we've created pyramids, we've created all sorts of things. Some of those things still stand today. You know, some of those things were made out of wood and they've disappeared a long time since. But it's very important to understand that even though humanity acknowledged those nodes by creating sacred sites, that I suppose map work still exists in many, many places where they couldn't, because simply the earth grid is far too complex to really map out in a 3D or a 2D way for us to understand, okay, we need a temple there, we need a temple there, we need a pyramid here, we need a pyramid there. It doesn't really work that way. How it works is we step into that awakening of the sacred earth, we step into the psychic landscape. And that is where we start to tap into the astral temples that already exist in those places. They don't just exist in this dream spirit world, they exist here and now on a different note, so to speak. So it's very important for us to understand that even though we have the ability to experience solidity, I have the ability to take something physical and drink it with the perception of it's going inside of me, we also need to understand that in this physical space, there is a physical space that exists in a higher dimension. There is a physical space that is existing in a higher dimension, but in the same space. Like I said earlier, there is no place outside of this room except this room recreated to be the room you think you're going into as you walk out of the door. And as again, it might not grapple in your mind, but let go of the mind and try to come to the space of centered within yourself, so that there is no need to understand, there is just the oneness. And so it's really, really amazing, because we can create sacred sites that we go to be the whales at. You know, so at the pyramids, I've been talking about the South American pyramids specifically, where what they would do is I don't know if everybody knows, but a Mexican pyramid with the Aztec or the Inca with these big stepped pyramids. And on the top, they had a flat place, and this was actually the ceremonial place of the pyramid. And for a very, very long time, they took people up there and sacrificed them. And so what they were doing, in essence, many, many things, but from my perspective and my teachings, what they were doing is they were taking the energy of that soul, the fragment of oneness, and putting it back in the purest form into that oneness that is the earth grid. And so people were sacrificed into volcanoes. Volcanoes are exactly the same thing. If you know anything about volcanology, you'll know that volcanoes are a shitstorm of magnetic chaos that is bubbling in molten mineral form. If you don't know anything about volcanology, please send me a message. I'm going to send you a link to a documentary about volcanoes, because all that a volcano is liquid crystal. Well, it's liquid fire, but it is liquid crystal fire. And for me, that is magnificent. Part of my dream is to go and stand on top of one of the volcanoes in Vanuatu and look down into the heart of the blood of Earth and connect with that. Now I see that we have 10 minutes left and I'm babbling. I'm not even halfway. But yeah, so coming to the crystal teachings is while we can understand that we have created these temples as connecting points to the grid, we also need to understand that beneath the surface of the earth, there is this mineral collection or collective, this race of beings, many races of beings that exist within the crust of the earth, not as the physical expression that we experience, but that is a fragment that we get to interact with. And so part of, as an owner of a crystal shop, it's very difficult for me because I feel like there's a huge magpie mentality with crystals because it's beautiful and we understand that it has a benefit. So we want to bring as much of that into our life as we can. But on the other side of somebody, as somebody who goes to the mines to see what effect taking those stones out of the earth actually does, I want to cry because we are both destroying the earth to save the earth. We're destroying the earth to save ourselves. And I believe that this omnipotent, omnisentient mother being that holds us in her womb for us to be birthing the spirit consciousness through the physical experience is so generous and so grateful that we're willing to have that experience. But also, we, as much as a codependent relationship is beneficial to co-experiencing reality, there does need to come a time where we say, well, I see that you are willing to sacrifice, and I see that you are willing to give, and I see that you're willing to receive whatever is given. But so Jean and I had an experience a while back about making something which he's still yet to receive, but we know what we want. But because we're indifferent and existing in a space of unconditional love, we don't choose what we want. And so we continue this codependent relationship of abuse, essentially, because we say, well, do whatever. And I'm okay with that because I am so free and so empowered and not weighted down by anything that can be done to me. But at the end of the day, the teaching in being like that to others is for them to acknowledge and to realize, yes, I can shit on your parade, and that's great. But do I need to? And beyond need, do I want to? And beyond want, is there any value in that? And through that line of question, we're able to get to a point where we say, well, yes, mother loves us. Mother is willing to deal with anything that we throw at her. But at the end of the day, we grow up and say, Mom, I love you and you don't need to take my shit anymore. And I don't think the earth is going to do that. It needs to be us to step forward and say, Mom, shut. You know, it's been great, but we don't need to fill you with poison anymore for us to learn how to be free. We are free, and we are willing to be free together with you. And so in that line of thinking, in your crystal practice, if there's a crystal that you want, don't necessarily go and buy it first. If there's a crystal that's speaking to you because of whatever synchronicity that's come up into your life, don't, and yeah, this is really bad sales, but don't go and buy it. Sit in your space. And like at the beginning, come to presence with your heartbeat. Come to presence with the earth's heartbeat. And say, I choose now in this moment, or I call to the energy of amethyst in this moment. And I would like to feel the amethyst. I would like to work with the energy of the amethyst. Because I can tell you now, I don't know where everybody's based. I'm in Greenside at the moment. In Greenside, all the way through Johannesburg town, we are sitting on a big, big, big vein of quartz. Because yes, gold underneath and so on, but there's this massive quartz cluster, especially under St. John's College. Underneath St. John's College, the guys at the back in the day, they actually scribed, divined where to put this place of education, and they found this place that was super high energy. And since then, or they built the school, and since then they've actually done geological surveys to prove that this thing is sitting on a giant quartz cluster. And quartz is a holder of information. It's an amplifier of information. It's a connecting point. And so they built this education place there because they knew that we were connecting to knowledge in that place, and they wanted to hold the space for that. And so if you don't take anything away from this class this evening, is to take away that you don't need the physical thing. It's awesome. I love it. And I love to work with it through this way. But it's important to understand that beneath our feet, without the separation, you know, like I was saying earlier, there is no separatedness. There is no separatedness from you and all of the crystals in the earth, because you are made of the same thing. And if you know who you are, then it will know what you are. And you will be able to communicate, and you will be able to resonate, and not just as a new experience of coming into a group of new people and trying to find your way in that space, in a space of, I have done this for all eternity, because you are the mother planet that is existing timelessly as that grid. and as that collective of minerals, and as that collective of energies, as that collective of magnetic pulses. And so when we look at this understanding that in the core of the earth and throughout the crust of the earth, there's crystals everywhere, you can understand that we are, as this planet Earth, also merely just a point in the galactic grid. And so that is something that's very, very important now for us to take up ownership and responsibility for our galactic presence. We have been for many years now, millennia even, connecting with extraterrestrials and connecting with sentient life in other forms, not just this physical density that we experience. And we have been communicating and sharing knowledge and trading and co-creating and doing all of these things. But in this time now, it is so very important that us as a collective, as an Earth collective, step into our power on that galactic level. Is to understand that we are the ambassadors of Earth. We are not just people, we are not just going through our healing journey, but we are also the kaitiaki, the keepers of Earth. We are the expression of Earth energy, and we have a seat at the council. We have a seat at the galactic table. And that sounds absolutely bonkers and crazy, but at the end of the day, this work with the crystals is important when we do it on a planetary level, is not just to do it for the planet, but also to understand that we are sitting at that galactic table. There's many, many ambassadors. Some of you might be them, some of you might know them. There are people that are fully conscious of their role in that ambassadorship with the universe. And so we look at all of the planets and we look at all of the planetary bodies and understand that this is a collection of crystals. That whole macrocosm, microcosm, as much as the earth is made out of crystals and we are made out of crystals, the entire universe is a collection of space dust. And space dust kind of looks like this. Not all exactly like this. I only have quartz with me, but many, many different forms. And so the minute we start to engage with crystalline technologies, this is the minute we start to step up to the galactic plate. It's the minute that we actually step up to owning that the human race is amazing. There is no black or white, there is no man or woman, there is no nothing, there is human. And that is the point that we're trying to get to with all of the spiritual jargon, with all of these spiritual practices, is we connecting back to the oneness as the expression of humanity in its many flavors. And I'm very excited to be at that frontline point. We are debating racism, we are debating sexism, we are blurring those lines so that we can get to a point where I don't have to be a man or a woman. I can just be this, that is. I don't even have to be Stuart. I am what I am, and that is all that is. Just an expression of all that is, and that is, within this earth realm. And I feel like a lot of this is going here, for people, but it's not supposed to go here. It's not supposed to come inside of you. This is not teachings to make you more knowledgeable. This is teachings to make you more in the knowing of who you truly are. This is teachings in order for you to be free in that which you are. And so I can sit here and give you technologies and tools to work with knowing who you are, but all you have to do is put your picture on the Zoom thing and say, hello, I see you. And I do see you. I'm not looking at me because there's my screen and there's my thing, but I'm looking at my face. And I'm looking at your face and your face and your face and your Jay and your Galaxy and your Tammy. And I'm seeing you because I know who you are, and I'm so grateful to share this space with you. So I have 4 minutes left. And in these 4 minutes, I would like to say that I love you. And I love what I do. So I'm not going to be all mushy about it. I'm going to take some more time for myself. Just to bring us into a moment of all of this babble that Stuart said, how do I connect to the earth grid? What does this have to do with crystals, all of the stuff he's spoken about for the last hour? I asked everybody to get a crystal at the beginning. How many of you forgot that I did that? How many of you forgot that that was even there? Oh, you're holding it, so you didn't. Okay, so if everybody can just take their crystal in their hands, it doesn't matter which hand, whichever hand works for you. I like both because it is the oneness. But it's entirely up to you. Sometimes we're working with the more masculine, sometimes we're working with the more feminine, sometimes we want to put it on different parts of our body, sometimes we just want to put it there and let it be free, not entrap it. So take your moment with the crystal. Do with it as you feel, as you wish to engage with this sentient being that is not the thing that you're holding, but is something so much greater. And just close your eyes. And so if you came into that moment and you said, what do I do now? The best thing that I can do to help you in this moment is to say, do what we have just done for 10 minutes every day. Go into a moment with a crystal, whether it's a beautiful crystal that you got from my beautiful, wonderful crystal shop, or whether it's a crystal that you found in the earth, whether it's a rock, whether it's a beautiful geometric crystal, whether it's whatever, some kind of a mineral. You know, if you've got vitamin C tablets on your kitchen table that you take sometimes, take out one of those pills and connect with the mineral that is vitamin C. Close your eyes. You don't have to close your eyes. I close my eyes because it blocks out this room that I'm in. And listen. And I promise you that it will start to speak. Your mind might get busy for a while, and that's fine. Don't chase it. Don't attach to it. Don't specifically non-attach to it. Just be present and share the presence with this mineral, this crystalline being, and allow it to teach you. And allow you to teach it, because it's always a co-creative experience. A lot of the time we feel like, oh, this crystal can do this for me, so I'm going to do that. But actually the crystal says, oh, God, you are gorgeous. God, you have a beautiful heart. Or God, you have a beautiful third eye. Or God, you have a beautiful voice. Or God, you are, and I'm here to be with you. And that's all that we need to understand the true essence of what it is to connect with the sacred earth, what it is to awaken the sacred earth within us, is to just hold presence with that God being, to hold presence with that oneness, to hold presence with whatever it is, to hold presence with you guys in this moment, to hold presence with the drive to work, is to hold that presence. And that presence is not an om. That presence is I am here. And it's a full engagement of what you're experiencing. And so when you go into crystal healing, or when you work with crystal healing, don't get books. Don't listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what you are saying. Listen to what is being said. And that is where you will learn to work with the crystals with the greatest of wisdoms, with the greatest of knowings, with the greatest of teachings, is because it is not behind an identity. It may be behind a specific thing. Oh gosh, Luke got kicked out and I never let him back in. It is not this specific thing, because there is so much more behind it, but this is the place through which we engage it. And by holding presence with this, my Lord, we can experience some beautiful things. And so I hold presence with you, and you, so that I can know the oneness, so that I can know the God being, so that I may know what the beauty of creation is. And that is all that is required. So thank you all so very, very much. I know there wasn't much practical examples of what you can do with stones, but like I say, I cannot tell you that. No one can tell you that. Only your experience will unfold it for you, so that you may know the truth of your practice. I mean, I know people, I've got a friend that does this. And that's how he engages with crystals. I've got friends that I have a friend that does yoni work, that likes to stick them in places. And so there is no right or wrong way to work with the crystals. It's about awakening yourself to the sacred earth and the teachings of that sacred earth, and working with what you are intuitively shown. I will gladly share my truth with you, as will everybody else, but don't take it. You may not take my truth. You may use my truth to create the perspective of your truth, but it's mine. And part of what makes me me is just that part of the expression of the divine. And so I really urge you, stop putting on a uniform, stop practicing what everybody else says, come into yourself, know who you are, and learn and grow and evolve and expand and become that even more. So yes, thank you so very, very much. If you want to unmute your microphones, we can have some questions. If you don't want to, then bye-bye. So yes, does anybody have any questions? Would anybody like to run the gauntlet?